In the vast expanse of the galactic frontier, there exists a truth universally acknowledged. Diplomacy is the art of telling someone to go to hell in such a way that they look forward to the trip. And nobody, not a single species in the known universe, does this better than humans. These were the first words in Ambassador Jack Remington's file, and they made High Counselor Vendra of the Galactic Union sigh deeply. The Union was facing its most significant crisis in 3 centuries, and their last hope was apparently this human. The Zargosian Empire, a militaristic species that resembled Earth octopi if they'd evolved exoskeletons and a profound love for conquest, but had been expanding aggressively toward Union space. 6 diplomatic missions had already failed. The Zargosians had tried logic. The Meridians had attempted empathy. The Teldarians had offered technology exchanges. All returned humiliated or not at all. "Are you certain about this, Counselor?" asked Vendra's aide, glancing at the holographic image of Ambassador Remington, a disheveled human with perpetually amused eyes and a smile that screamed trouble. The human diplomatic court insisted he was their specialist for impossible situations. Vendra's 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of deep concern, though their definition of diplomat appears questionable. Ambassador Jack Remington's file was alarmingly thin for someone with his supposed credentials. Former military intelligence, skilled in 17 languages, 12 of them non-human, and disciplinary notes that filled more data space than his accomplishments. His most notable achievement was apparently solving the Proxima Centauri crisis by challenging the hostile alien leader to something called beer pong. "The Zargosians have moved 3 battle fleets to the Arcturus sector," said the aide. "Their Supreme General Krazak has publicly declared that negotiations are the refuge of the weak. Our analysts give us 2 weeks before they strike." Vendra studied Remington's unimpressive image once more. "The humans have an expression. It's so crazy it might work. Let's hope they're right." Meanwhile, on approach to Galactic Union headquarters aboard his ship aptly named Plan B, Jack Remington was sprawled in the captain's chair, one leg thrown over the armrest, reading Zargosian war tactics through the ages, while eating something that would horrify most sentient species, a peanut butter and pickle sandwich. "Loki, give me the rundown on Zargosian cultural taboos again," he called between bites. A small drone hovered into view, its central eye pulsing blue. Logical operations and knowledge interface online. Zargosian cultural taboos include showing the underside of one's appendages, consuming food in public, discussing reproductive methods, mentioning their evolutionary relationship to non-sentient ocean dwellers, and expressing doubt about their military prowess. Jack grinned. Perfect. And their social weaknesses? Zargosians possess an obsessive need to appear dominant, hide internal political fractures, and maintain rigid hierarchical structures. They are also extremely sensitive to perceived mockery and confusion, which they interpret as weakness. "You know what, Loki? I think the Galactic Union is going to get exactly what they asked for. A human solution to an alien problem." Loki's eye pulsed red briefly. "Sir, may I remind you that your last human solution resulted in 3 formal complaints, 1 diplomatic incident, and that business with the ambassador's daughter and the chocolate fountain?" Jack's grin widened. "And peace. Don't forget the peace part. After they tried to assassinate you. Twice. Details, Loki. Just details." As the ship docked at Union headquarters, Jack straightened his rumpled uniform jacket, deliberately missed a button, and expertly mussed his hair. First impressions were important in his line of work, and he had a very specific impression in mind. The first thing anyone noticed about Galactic Union headquarters was the overwhelming sense of order. Every species had its designated sector, every corridor was mathematically precise, and every meeting ran with the rigid punctuality of a quantum clock. It was into this symphony of interstellar bureaucracy that Jack Remington strolled 15 minutes late, whistling an ancient Earth tune called Highway to Hell. Ambassador Remington, you were expected at Docking Bay 7 at precisely 0900 hours, sputtered a tall, reed-thin alien with pale blue skin and an expression of perpetual calculation, Ambassador Nix Vol of the Teldarians. Was I? Huh. Time zones, am I right? Killer across galaxies. Jack extended his hand for a shake, a gesture he knew perfectly well was considered invasive by Teldarians. Call me Jack. Only my mother calls me Ambassador, and that's only when she's really disappointed in me. Nix Vol recoiled slightly but was saved from responding by the arrival of Commander Flissa, the Meridian representative. Meridians resembled humanoids made of living crystal, refracting light in mesmerizing patterns. Unlike the rigid Nix Vol, Flissa's diplomatic training allowed her to adapt smoothly. Ambassador Remington, welcome to Union headquarters. We have arranged quarters for you and your companion. She glanced uncertainly at Loki, who was scanning everything in sight. This is Loki. Don't mind him. He's just cataloging ways this place could be infiltrated. Old habits from our spy days. Both aliens stiffened noticeably. Spy days? Nix Vol's voice rose an octave. Did I say spy? I meant strategic information acquisition specialist. Much more diplomatic. Jack winked conspiratorially. Though between us, humans don't really separate our diplomats from our spies. Makes things more efficient. Loki interrupted, saving the increasingly uncomfortable aliens. Sir, High Counselor Vendra awaits your presence in the strategic planning chamber. Right you are, my mechanical friend. Lead on, distinguished colleagues. Let's go prevent a war. As they walked, Jack asked casual questions that grew progressively more uncomfortable: how Teldarians handled mating season, whether Meridian crystal structures ever accidentally shattered during arguments, and if either species had ever considered that the Vraxians might just need a really good party to loosen up. By the time they reached the planning chamber, Nix Vol was visibly distressed while Flissa studied Jack with increasing curiosity. This human seemed different from the logical, careful diplomats the Union typically employed, deliberately so. High Counselor Vendra, a massive, six-limbed being with scales that shifted color with mood, currently a troubled purple, greeted them from the head of a large circular table. Ambassador Remington, we are grateful for Earth's assistance in this crisis. Jack performed an elaborate bow that wasn't quite correct for any known culture. High Counselor. Great to meet you. Love what you've done with the place, very space bureaucracy chic. Now, I understand we've got some angry octopi to deal with? The room fell silent. Calling Vraxians octopi was roughly equivalent to referring to humans as hairless apes with delusions of grandeur, technically accurate, but deeply offensive. Vendra's scales flickered to alarmed orange before settling into diplomatic blue. The Vraxian Empire has refused all traditional diplomatic overtures. Their Supreme General Krazak has agreed to one final meeting before they bring down the hammer. Yeah, got it. Jack dropped into a seat, propping his feet on the pristine table. When's this showdown happening? Tomorrow, Nix Vol said stiffly. We have prepared extensive briefing materials on Vraxian cultural sensitivities, military capabilities, and negotiation parameters. Jack waved dismissively. Won't need those. I've got my own approach. And what approach might that be? Flissa asked, her crystalline features catching the light as she tilted her head. Jack grinned, the kind of grin that had preceded numerous interplanetary incidents. Let's just say that when predators meet prey, they expect fear. When they meet competitors, they expect aggression. But when they meet humans, he winked. Well, they never quite know what to expect. Loki's eye pulsed red again. Sir, perhaps the ambassador might benefit from at least reviewing. Loki, remember Rio? The Rio incident is classified at 11 levels above this gathering's clearance, sir. Exactly, and it worked. Nix Vol's fingers twitched toward what was likely some sort of emergency communication device. Ambassador, the Vraxians have decimated 3 species who opposed them. They've conquered 17 solar systems in the past decade. This is not a situation for human improvisation. Jack's casual demeanor shifted for just a moment, and something sharp and calculating flashed in his eyes. Ambassador Nix Vol, do you know why humans survived on Earth? Not because we were the strongest or fastest or had the best natural weapons. We survived because we're unpredictable. Because we do what no logical species would ever expect. The moment passed, and his easy smile returned. So who's hungry? I hear the commissary serves something resembling tacos on Tuesdays. As Jack sauntered out, Loki hovering faithfully beside him, Flissa turned to Vendra. Counselor, are you certain about this? The human seems unstable. Vendra's scales had shifted to a thoughtful yellow. Perhaps. Or perhaps instability is exactly what we need. The Vraxian diplomatic vessel resembled a massive, barbed arrowhead, all sharp angles and implied threat. But when it docked with Union headquarters, the artificial gravity briefly fluctuated from its sheer mass. Even their diplomatic ships were heavily armed warships. Showtime, Jack whispered to Loki as they stood in the reception bay alongside a delegation of increasingly nervous Union representatives. Remember, no matter what happens, this is going exactly according to plan. Sir, we don't have a plan. Exactly. They'll never see it coming. The Vraxian delegation emerged like a nightmare in formal wear. 7 feet tall at minimum, with armored exoskeletons in varying shades of deep crimson and black, their multiple limbs moved with unsettling precision. 4 arms, 2 legs, and what humans might call a face dominated by compound eyes and tentacular mouth parts that clicked constantly in their native language. Supreme General Krazak towered over the others, battle scars visible even through his ceremonial armor. The universal translators kicked in as he spoke. I come representing the might of the Vraxian Empire. We will hear your final pleas before we expand into what you incorrectly consider Union territory. Before any of the official Union representatives could speak, Jack stepped forward with the confident stride of someone who had absolutely no idea he should be terrified. General Krazak. Fantastic entrance. Really, the whole intimidating vibe is chef's kiss. He actually made the gesture. Jack Remington, representing the newest and arguably strangest members of the Union humans. Gotta say, love the exoskeleton. Very crunchy on the outside, squishy on the inside cheek. The Vraxian delegation went utterly still, a deeply bad sign to anyone familiar with their kind. Stillness preceded violence in Vraxian body language. You dare speak of our sacred bodily form with such disrespect? Krazak's voice was deadly quiet. Nix Vol stepped forward frantically. Supreme General, please forgive the humans' ignorance of proper protocol. No, it was a compliment, Jack insisted. Where I come from, crunchy is good, like our potato chips. Or beetles. Some humans eat beetles, you know. Not me personally, but hey, don't knock it till you try it, right? The Vraxian military attaché leaned toward Krazak. Sir, our intelligence indicated humans were dangerous, but this one appears defective. Jack heard this perfectly well and grinned wider. Not defective, just differently tactical. Hey, speaking of tactics, I heard you guys dominated the Krell sector last solar cycle. Our move. Though between us, I think you could have saved some resources if you'd gone through the Benzar route instead. Every Vraxian tensed. Jack had just revealed knowledge of classified Vraxian military operations and criticized them in the same casual breath. Krazak's compound eyes focused on Jack with laser intensity. You have military intelligence on our movements. Oh, we humans have our fingers in lots of pies. Metaphorically speaking. Though now I'm wondering if Vraxians eat pie? With the whole tentacle situation. Jack wiggled his fingers in front of his mouth. High Counselor Vendra, whose scales had shifted to horrified white, attempted to salvage the situation. Supreme General, perhaps we should proceed to the formal reception area. Wait, Jack interrupted again. I brought gifts. It's a human custom. Very rude not to bring gifts. He fumbled in his pockets and produced a small object. Here we go, authentic Earth magic. We call it a Rubik's Cube. Hours of fun trying to get all the sides matching. Though with your multiple arms, you might solve it too quickly. Challenge, try it with just 2 limbs. He tossed the puzzle cube to Krazak, who reflexively caught it. The Vraxian guards immediately moved into defensive positions, certain the object was a weapon. It's a puzzle, not a bomb, Jack clarified. Though I did once see someone get so frustrated with one they threw it through a window. Anyway, shall we drink and eat and pretend we're not all thinking about interstellar war? As the painfully uncomfortable procession moved toward the reception hall, Commander Flissa fell into step beside Jack. Ambassador, I cannot tell if you are a fool or a madman. Jack's eyes twinkled. Why limit myself to just one option? Behind them, Nix Vol was frantically apologizing to the Vraxian delegation while Loki recorded everything, including most interestingly the fact that General Krazak had not relinquished the puzzle cube and was subtly manipulating it with 2 of his lower limbs. In the reception hall, things deteriorated further when Jack loudly asked about Vraxian reproduction methods. Taboo 3 compared their military ships to fancy space squids. Taboo 4 and suggested that perhaps they were overcompensating for something with all their conquest. Taboo 5 questioning military prowess. By the time the initial meeting concluded, 3 Union diplomats had fainted, Nix Vol appeared on the verge of a nervous breakdown, and the Vraxian delegation had scheduled another meeting for the following day specifically requesting the humans' presence. That, Vendra stated when the Vraxians had departed, was the single most disastrous first contact in Union history. Jack, sipping something blue and alcoholic, nodded appreciatively. Thank you. Took years to perfect my technique. It wasn't a compliment. You've confirmed their worst assumptions about our weakness. They demanded your presence tomorrow clearly to make an example of you. Did they? Jack raised an eyebrow. Or did they just encounter something they couldn't immediately categorize as prey or predator, and now they're intensely curious? Notice how Krazak kept the cube? Flissa's crystalline form shimmered with sudden insight. You were deliberately provocative. Provocative, sure. But calculate each provocation. I insulted their bodies, but with admiration. I revealed we had intelligence on them while subtly critiquing a tactical error only a military mind would notice. I gave them a puzzle that requires patience and logical thinking qualities they pride themselves on. Nix Vol stared at Jack. You're suggesting this chaos was strategic? Jack took another sip. Humans have a saying, in confusion, there is opportunity. Or maybe I just made that up. Either way, tomorrow's going to be interesting. By morning, rumors of the human diplomat's bizarre behavior had spread throughout Union headquarters. Some whispered he was mentally unstable, others suggested he might be a secret weapon. Jack did nothing to dispel either notion as he strolled through the corridors in a formal uniform that somehow looked slept in despite being fresh from the synthesizer. Today's agenda, Loki, he asked, munching on something that looked suspiciously like a breakfast burrito. The Vraxian delegation has requested a private strategic discussion, followed by cultural exchange presentations, and concluding with preliminary negotiation parameters if appropriate. Perfect. Operation Diplomatic Disaster, Phase 2, Jack grinned, wiping salsa from his chin. How's our background surveillance coming along? Loki's eye pulsed with multiple colors as it processed data. Fascinating results, sir. After yesterday's encounter, communications between the Vraxian vessel and their homeworld increased by 340%. Analysis suggests internal disagreement. Also, General Krazak spent 3 hours attempting to solve the Rubik's Cube. Did he succeed? Yes. Then he disassembled and reassembled it to understand its mechanism. Jack nodded approvingly. Thorough. I like that in an adversary. The private meeting with the Vraxians began formally enough, in a secure chamber with just Jack, Loki, General Krazak, and his senior military advisor, Subcommander Vrex. Human, Krazak began without preamble. Your behavior yesterday was deeply offensive by any civilized standard. Was it? My apologies. Different cultural norms and all that. You should see how we behave at our own weddings. There's this tradition called the chicken dance that would absolutely blow your mind. You speak nonsense deliberately, Vrex accused, leaning forward aggressively. Do I? Maybe. Or maybe humans just think differently. Jack leaned back comfortably. For instance, we're sitting here having this nice chat while your secondary fleet is positioning itself near the Denorian Rift, ready to cut off Union supply routes. Both Vraxians went rigid. This was highly classified tactical information. What else do you know, human? Krazak asked, his voice dangerously soft. I know your emperor is dying, and at least 3 military factions are positioning themselves for succession. I know your conquest of Union space isn't just about expansion, it's about securing your political position before the power struggle begins. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. These are internal Vraxian matters, Krazak said carefully. Sure. Just like it's an internal human matter that I brought these. Jack pulled out a package of something wrapped in colorful foil. Earth delicacy. We call it candy. This type is chocolate-covered insects. Thought you might appreciate the exoskeleton connection. The conversational whiplash was deliberate, and Jack watched as the Vraxians struggled to shift from potential diplomatic crisis to candy. Suspiciously, Vrex took one and analyzed it with a small device. No detectable toxins. Of course not. What kind of diplomat do you think I am? Jack looked wounded. Besides, poisoning is so obvious. If I wanted to take you out, I'd be far more creative. This did not appear to comfort the Vraxians, but Krazak nevertheless tried the candy, his mouth parts working curiously. It is not unpleasant. Great. Now that we're all friends sharing snacks, let's talk about why war between us would be stupid. The Zargosian Empire does not fear conflict, Krazak said automatically. Never said you did. Said it would be stupid, not scary. Different things. Jack's demeanor shifted, becoming surprisingly focused. You need a victory for internal political reasons. The Union needs to maintain its borders. Those goals aren't actually mutually exclusive if you think outside the exoskeleton. Before Krazak could respond, they were interrupted by the arrival of the cultural exchange delegations. Jack immediately switched back to his chaotic persona for the larger audience. For the next 3 hours, Union representatives presented detailed historical and cultural information about member species. When it was Earth's turn, Jack showed clips from human entertainment, most puzzlingly, something called reality television and cat videos. This is your culture? Vrex asked incredulously after watching humans voluntarily eating disgusting substances for competition. Part of it. We're complicated. 1 minute writing profound poetry about the human condition, the next watching people get hit in the reproductive organs for laughs. Jack shrugged. Keeps life interesting. Throughout the presentations, Jack continued his strategic disruptions. He asked inappropriate questions about Vraxian molting cycles. He accidentally revealed knowledge of their sacred texts. He complimented their military efficiency while subtly highlighting recent failures. Nix Vol watched in horror, certain they were witnessing the final moments before interstellar war. Flissa, however, had begun to notice patterns in Jack's apparent madness. Every seemingly random comment targeted a specific aspect of Vraxian society, particularly their political divisions. By the end of the day, the Vraxian delegation was in visible disarray. Twice Krazak and Vrex had stepped out for private consultations that Loki's sensors detected as heated arguments. Junior officers were exchanging meaningful glances, and the unified front they'd presented initially had developed cracks. "What exactly are you doing?" Flissa asked Jack during a brief recess. "Practicing human diplomacy. We learned long ago that unity is often just a facade. Show me a united front, and I'll show you deeply buried disagreements just waiting to be exploited. You're deliberately trying to create division among them?" Jack took a sip from his drink. "I'm giving existing divisions room to breathe." "Big difference." He winked. "Tomorrow's the big finale. Make sure you're there, it's going to be spectacular." The formal diplomatic dinner was a spectacle of interstellar elegance. Representatives from 12 Union species gathered in the Grand Hall, a vast chamber with viewports overlooking the galactic spiral. The Vraxian delegation arrived in full ceremonial armor, metal plates gleaming under the starlight. Jack, in contrast, appeared in what he claimed was formal human attire but looked suspiciously like what Earthers called a tuxedo t-shirt. "Ambassador," Nixvol hissed, "this is deeply inappropriate. Relax. Humans believe that overdressing implies insecurity." This was completely false, but Jack delivered it with such conviction that even Nixvol couldn't be certain. As the dinner progressed, the tension became increasingly palpable. Union representatives maintained rigid diplomatic protocol while the Vraxians radiated cold hostility. Jack, meanwhile, bounced between tables telling inappropriate jokes, sharing bizarre human customs, and generally creating the diplomatic equivalent of a hurricane. Loki hovered near General Krazak, who had grown increasingly contemplative over the meetings. The AI noted that the general had brought the Rubik's Cube to the dinner, occasionally manipulating it beneath the table. The breaking point came, as Jack had planned, with the traditional sharing of intoxicants. Each species offered a ceremonial drink from their homeworld. When it was Earth's turn, Jack produced a bottle of what he claimed was Tennessee's finest whiskey. "Before we drink," he announced, rising to his feet with glass in hand, "humans have a custom called a toast. I'd like to offer one to our Vraxian friends." Every Union diplomat tensed. Jack had been leading to this moment, and they were certain it would be the spark that ignited war. "To General Krazak," Jack began, his voice suddenly clear and formal, "who has served the Empire faithfully for 62 years through 3 emperors. Who lost his clutch brother in the Battle of Sirius Prime. Who questions the succession plans of Admiral Zorax but is too loyal to speak against them openly." The room went deathly silent. Jack had just revealed intensely personal information about Krazak alongside a dangerous political accusation regarding a high-ranking Vraxian not present. Krazak rose slowly, all 4 arms rigid with tension. "How could you possibly know these things, human?" Jack smiled, but it wasn't his usual chaotic grin. It was something older and sharper. Because understanding your enemy better than they understand themselves is the first rule of both war and diplomacy. And humans excel at both. He raised his glass higher. "To the Vraxian Empire, may your internal power struggles resolve without dragging the rest of us into them." Every Vraxian was now on their feet. Sub-Commander Vrex's hand moved to his ceremonial weapon. "This human insults our honor." "Does he?" Krazak said softly, compound eyes fixed on Jack. "Or does he speak truths we tell ourselves are secret?" The tension in the room had reached breaking point. Union representatives were discreetly moving toward exits. Vraxian officers were divided between those looking to Krazak and those looking to Vrex. And then Jack did something truly unexpected. He laughed. He laughed. "You know what's funny about humans? We're terrible at keeping secrets but excellent at finding them. We're awful at following rules but brilliant at creating new games. We're individually weak but collectively unstoppable." He set down his glass. "And we absolutely love a good plot twist." He nodded to Loki. who projected a holographic display in the center of the room detailed evidence of communications between certain Vraxian officers and rival political factions within their empire. For example, Jack continued casually, Sub-Commander Vrex has been feeding information to Admiral Zorax for months, undermining your authority, General. Which puts your military expansion in an interesting new light. Chaos erupted among the Vraxian delegation. Accusations flew. Vrex denied everything, then attempted to attack Jack, only to be restrained by Krazak's own guards. And through it all, Jack stood calmly drinking his whiskey, watching as the unified Vraxian threat disintegrated into internal power struggle right before the Union's eyes. 3 days later, the Galactic Union Council convened an emergency session to ratify the newly negotiated Vraxian non-aggression pact. General Krazak, now acting with the full authority of the Vraxian Emperor, the old one having suddenly expired, stood alongside High Counselor Vendria as they formally signed the treaty. Jack watched from the back of the chamber, looking uncharacteristically tidy in proper diplomatic attire. I still don't understand, Nix Vol confessed, standing beside him. How did you know it would work? I didn't, Jack admitted. But I knew the Vraxians were facing internal crisis and needed an external enemy to maintain unity. Classic political tactic, we humans have been using it for millennia. All I did was make it impossible for them to maintain the facade. Commander Flissa joined them, her crystalline form shimmering with what might have been admiration. You deliberately presented yourself as chaotic and unpredictable. While actually being meticulously calculated, Jack finished with a nod. Humans learned long ago that diplomacy isn't always about being diplomatic. Sometimes it's about being the wild card that forces everyone else to show their hands. And the information about their internal politics? Nix Vol pressed. Our intelligence services had no such data. Jack winked. Let's just say humans have a gift for pattern recognition, gossip, and good old-fashioned guesswork. We filled in the blanks and acted confident. Most of the time, that's enough. As Krazak concluded the ceremony, he approached Jack directly, a significant honor in Vraxian culture. Human diplomat, the general said formally, your methods are unfathomable, but effective. The Empire acknowledges your unique approach. Jack bowed slightly. Just doing my job, General. Though between us, solving a political crisis is a lot like solving that cube I gave you. Sometimes you have to mess it up completely before you can put it right. Krazak made a sound that might have been a Vraxian laugh. Your species is dangerous, Ambassador Remington. Funny, that's what all the other humans say too. Later, as Jack prepared to depart for his next assignment, Loki hovered beside him on the observation deck overlooking the Union fleet. Sir, was it truly necessary to cause so much chaos? Jack watched as the Vraxian diplomatic vessel peacefully disengaged from the station. Loki, humans have a theory called chaos theory I. The idea that complex systems are sensitive to initial conditions. A butterfly flaps its wings in Brazil, and you get a tornado in Texas. I'm familiar with the concept, sir. Well, sometimes diplomacy needs a butterfly, or in my case, a bull in a china shop. Jack smiled. The Union tried logic, reason, and traditional diplomacy. They needed something unpredictable. They needed a human, Loki concluded. Exactly. In a galaxy of species that evolved through predictable patterns, humanity's greatest strength is that we rarely make sense. Jack turned from the viewport. Now I hear there's a situation with the Draconian Collective that needs addressing. Something about them being offended by the concept of democracy? Loki's eye pulsed in what might have been resignation. I'll prepare Plan B, shall I? That's the spirit. After all, they said diplomacy would prevent war, but they had no idea what human diplomacy looks like. As Jack Remington sauntered toward his ship, several Union diplomats watched him go with a mixture of relief and newfound respect. They had witnessed firsthand why humans, despite being one of the youngest species in the Galactic Union, were already developing a reputation. Not as the strongest, not as the smartest, but certainly as the most unpredictable diplomats the galaxy had ever seen. And in a universe of rigid patterns and ancient protocols, unpredictability was sometimes the most powerful weapon of all.